You've seen our discussions on book contracts here on the channel, but what happens when a publisher violates the terms of the contract they have with an author that's signed with them? This happens, unfortunately, more than you think in the industry. So let's talk to everybody's favorite IP and entertainment lawyer, Tony, to find out more.
My name is Tony Iliakostas. I'm an adjunct professor of entertainment law and IP at New York Law School, and I have an Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok account called The IP Professor that's dedicated to all things intellectual property.
We have some things that pop up in the publishing industry from time to time that are a little bit of a red flag for potentially working with publishers. We have had instances where publishers have broken the contract with an author. They failed to meet those expectations as outlined in the contract. And when the author calls them on it and asks to have rights reverted, these authors will then, or the publishers then, will say, if you pay us money for X, Y, and Z, and they'll name things that were not in the contract, we will then release things to you. And if you do not go with their request for money for them, they will threaten these authors with ruining their careers, etc. So, Tony, let's talk about the legal side of publishers breaking contracts and then asking authors for money.
Yeah, that's a lot to digest right there. But I caution any author that's out there that's worked with a publisher like this to never do business with them. But that said, obviously, if you've been trapped and hoodwinked and into a deal with a publisher of this sort, I think the first step is to, one, not panic. I think that's a general trend. I always tell a lot of people, I think that, I think the worst thing you could do is have a state of shock and panic and freaking out, because I think that does create sort of like an incongruence when it comes to having some level-headed thinking. But the second step is to immediately go to your attorney. Mm-hmm. Your lawyer is going to be the best advocate for you. That's the whole point that lawyers went to law school, to advocate for their clients. And I think that if you have a good lawyer in your back pocket that can help you navigate this issue, they're going to walk you through the entire process and work on your behalf. Mm-hmm. Tangential to that, then we get to kind of 3, which is going to be your lawyer reviewing the contract that you had signed with that publisher. You really need to have them, or both jointly, more or less, but you really have to be very vigilant of what terms you had agreed to with that specific publisher. And essentially, if there was no clause written into that contract about back payments or basically some owing of money to the publisher, as if that's a condition to the termination of the contract, then obviously that is a blatant breach of contract. And also, you want to look for other provisions that are within that contract. So, for example, if there's an indemnification clause, indemnification clauses arise as kind of like an insurance policy, if you will, for both both parties, the publisher and the author, right? And the essence of an indemnification clause is that there's a claim that arises as a result of a breach of the contract, a material breach of that contract. One party would have to cover all the legal expenses of another. And so, you want to see if an indemnification clause is there. Is there a termination clause? What happens if there is a breach of contract clause there? Could that lead, is there language that allows the person that breached to cure that contract? Meaning, do they have an opportunity to say, mea culpa, let me fix this, and is there a term attached to it? Do they have 15 days to correct the mistake? Is it 30 days? Is it even less than that, 7 days or 3 days? You want to look at all of those terms, see if they even exist. Depending on how the contract reads, that's going to essentially move the needle, or at least create a better forecast of how this whole dispute is going to go. If there is no material term that lays out that you owe money to the publisher as a condition to terminating the contract, then what the publisher is doing is basically illegal and goes against the grain of the contract. If you unknowingly agree to that term, that's when it becomes a bit problematic. And then that's where your lawyer could step in, maybe get an arbitration underway or begin negotiation and settlement talks with the publisher and try to maybe mitigate whatever type of sum is being asked. So if they're asking for 10 grand, maybe your attorney could mitigate that number all the way down to, let's say, $2,000. It's $2,000. It's still a lot of money, but hey, it's better than paying $10,000 to the publisher. And just looking at all the other terms that would be relevant to, again, trying to figure out a legal way of backing out of that contract. But all that to say, this underlines how important it is when you are working with any publisher, big, small, indie, whoever it is, always look at the contracts. And before you yourself look at it quickly and sign it, you want to make sure that you have that contract in front of the eyes of a publishing attorney. So hiring a publishing lawyer that can help you read through the terms, redline as necessary to legally protect your rights as an author is such a pivotal part of that process. And that's ground zero in terms of having that relationship fostered between you, the author, and the publisher. So if you're if you're an author that is currently in this position, obviously working with a lawyer is a great part of the process and will help you invaluably. But maybe going forward, if you do sign with a publisher in the future, making sure that you have your contracts reviewed over and over, and again, working with a lawyer is going to be a pivotal part of the process so that you can prevent repeating mistakes like this from happening ever again.
And as an author who's been in this industry for a very long time and has seen a lot of contracts, I can say I have never seen a contract where an author would have to pay a publisher should the publisher break the terms of the contract. If you're seeing that inside of your contract, I would say it's a red flag and you need to run. If, however, you signed it without having a lawyer look it over, get yourself a lawyer and have them walk you through the process to make sure you know what's going on. And as Tony said, do not panic. I know it can be one of those things where you get really stressed and very frustrated and very scared, and you might have conversations with your publisher. I'm going to say, and I think Tony would back me on this, when you get that information from your publisher saying they are requesting money from you to release your files, don't respond to them. Go directly to your lawyer. Have the conversation before you make it worse on yourself. We don't want to say that we're offering anything to them. Tony.
And to that point, silence is not acceptance. So if you don't respond, that's not you accepting those terms either. That's you being wise. And, I hate to analogize it in this fashion, but, in criminal law, you have tons of criminal attorneys that say if police ask you questions in interrogation, do not answer. Always say, I'd like to have my lawyer present. I'm not obviously saying that this is a criminal matter, although maybe the behavior of the publisher is a bit criminal in nature because they're trying to steal your money. But all that to say, you would rather have a much more level-headed, measured response, and certainly have an answer that comes with a much more robust presence coming from a lawyer than if it's you yourself. Now, that's not to say that what you would say as an author isn't going to carry a lot of weight, but to have, again, an advocate work on your behalf to properly respond to a publisher that is essentially threatening you with some type of legal action and, creating these weird cockamamie stipulations, that's where a lawyer is going to step in and say, hold on, let's look at this contract and we're going to figure this out. And as a representative of my client, I'm going to make sure that we seek the best remedy for all parties, but especially for my client because I'm working on their behalf. So yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Definitely, if you get any sort of threat and you're harassed, work with the lawyer first, let them handle it for you. That's the whole point of you hiring them. And also, to your point about how don't panic, reaffirming that point, let me say, it is easier said than done, but it is truly such an imperative part of this process. Gathering all the info, gathering all the data, not getting flustered or freaked out. That's gonna lead to the best remedy, the best resolution. And trust me, that's gonna be light years better than if you start panicking and then you start saying, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Let me go ahead and pay that." Because now you're incriminating yourself and you're killing your chance of actually winning this type of claim against essentially a corrupt publisher.
And when I've seen this happen, I have seen it come along with threats hurting the author's career, making sure they never write again, all of these things. And so it is a really good idea to stop, not respond, and get your lawyer. Turn it into a song, memorize it, say
It's
it
like
again.
stop, drop, and roll, but
That's right.
it's basically lawyer edition.
Exactly. And we want to make sure we have that lawyer to make sure we are not being threatened. Our careers are not being hurt. By the way, your publisher can't hurt your career. Please don't panic over that. We'll have a conversation about that. If you want to have a conversation about that, I have tea. I have story times. Let me know. We'll have a conversation. But if you've got questions related to this or anything on the legal side of the publishing industry, drop it down below. Tony's coming back for upcoming episodes. We have a full playlist with his incredible knowledge and advice. We'll link it down below for you. But we want to make sure we're keeping you legally safe and protected inside of the publishing space because we know it can get a little out of hand sometimes. So go ahead and drop your questions down below. And as always, you can reach out to Tony on his social media. Tony, where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at the IP Professor. You can check out my entertainment law podcast called Unseen. New episodes drop every Friday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Follow along for daily videos helping you navigate the world of publishing, from writing to publishing to marketing, to make this your most profitable year ever. Tony's coming back for other episodes. I've been a multi-time best-selling author for a lot of years, so there's a ton of knowledge here on the channel, plus some really great guests to help you build up what you're doing as well. So drop those questions down below. We'll see you in the upcoming episodes.